Let's go. You're listening to KZSU, Stanford University's FM radio station, broadcasting across the Yay area on 90.1 and across the world at kzsu.org.
Welcome to Brands, Beats, and Bites, hosted by Daryl D.C. Cobbin and Larry Taman. Brands, Beats, and Bites stands at the intersection of brand tech and culture. We bring you interesting people and insightful points of view on what's popping and not popping in marketing, tech, culture, and beyond. DC and Larry are fascinated with the stories and people behind some of the best marketing in the business. No matter how dope your product, if your marketing sucks, your company may suck too. They both serve as managing partners at marketing consultancy Brand Positioning Doctors, where they help companies large and small, tech and non-tech, build better marketers so they can build great brands.
We got a good one today, peoples. We got a good one today. We got a special guest that he's our boy, actually. We got to acknowledge it.
Yeah, straight up.
This is one of our boys. We talk about our show standing at the intersection of brand, tech, and culture. You're going to get the brand and the tech today, but today you're also going to get the culture. You're going to get the culture. Larry, can you tell us more about our guest today?
Yes, for sure, DC. I can't tell you how much I've been waiting to do this show.
Oh, me too.
Okay?
Me too.
All right. So, folks, we have our very special guest this week is none other than Michael Moore.
Bold aware.
Yes, sir. In the relatively short history of Brands, Beats, and Bites, though, this is now our second guest who shares the same name of another person who, to use our marketing parlance, has a higher Q score. Okay. So, no, that is not that Michael Moore.
Not that Michael Moore.
No. This is Michael Boulware Moore, who is slimmer, darker, and more handsome than the other guy. Okay?
Easy.
All right?
Have to slather something on the side of his ears to get him up out of the studio, so please.
So I know when you hand your credit card to some folks, Mike, they're a bit surprised to see you. Is that correct?
Well, it seems like almost every day somebody has some snide remark about Michael Moore. The interesting thing, when I lived in Seattle, I got one kind of a reception about Michael Moore. I moved back to Georgia.
Ooh, you got a different reaction.
So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to continue, though. All right. So anyway, I just want to give the audience more of an intro to your great background. Mike grew up outside of Boston, went to school at Syracuse University, where he played varsity lacrosse. And that's sort of like playing college basketball at the University of North Carolina. You notice the school I used right there? He then went on to work in banking before going back to that school in Durham, Duke University, to earn his MBA. That's right, Fuqua School. After graduating from Duke, Michael joined the Coca-Cola company, working in brand management, where he worked in the Mellow Yellow brand and then worked on the Coca-Cola Classic brand. And trust us, folks, to get that assignment, you have to be really, really good. So obviously, this is rooted in the brand part of the tree. He was then recruited to join a high-flying company named No Fear. And with Michael's help, they were a juggernaut who at the time really embedded themselves in the culture with apparel that truly spoke to the No Fear name, with catchy phrases such as, face your fears, live your dreams, no fear. Soon after, his focus went to technology, right? There's a tech part here. After he was recruited to be president and CMO of Infopop, he mentioned Seattle. That was based in Seattle. Infopop was one of the early tech pioneers in online social media tools, and Mike helped advance them to be a very valuable B2B brand in that space. After Infopop, Mike went to the Peer Forum, where he chaired a group of CMOs, you hear that, folks, where they would share best practices and where they could help each other solve problems that only really other CMOs could relate to and really understand and help one another. So in his next big stop, he became the CEO of Glory Foods, a purveyor of Southern-style canned and fresh foods, where he grew the business for it to be sold. And then in 2016, he was recruited to be the CEO of the International African American Museum in Charleston, South Carolina, which he accepted and is currently in that position today. So D, really cool how now all of the brand, tech, and culture prowess that Mike has developed through his career are now being channeled into an everlasting, living, and breathing monument for good. right?
Yes.
The IAAM, for short, is a museum that will be built at the scene of much suffering where more than 80% of African Americans have an enslaved ancestor who came through Gadsden Wharf in Charleston. As it says on the website, the IAAM will present the largest undertold experiences and contributions of Americans of African descent. Thrilled to have you here in person on the farm, Mike, at Stanford. Welcome to Brands, Beats, and Bites, Michael Moore.
Welcome, Michael.
It's an honor to be here. It's always wonderful to see you, gentlemen. Unfortunately, I don't see you all enough, and it's wonderful to participate in this. I've really enjoyed the work that you've done to date, and I'm honored to be in this chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michael. I was going to get into something a little more serious, but I'm going to make a quick left turn here. So Larry
this is DC left turn.
Not shocked by this.
This is a DC left turn.
What you saying? So as Larry mentioned, Larry mentioned Michael played lacrosse in undergrad, and Michael is an incredible athlete. He's got a couple of sons who are also athletic. I mean, Michael.
4 of them, by the way.
Actually, 4 of them. Yeah. Yep, my bad. 4 of them. Okay, so Michael can ball. So Michael and I played on the same intramural basketball team.
We're going to go there?
We're going to go there. Way back in the day. Now, in the league.
Hang on, folks.
Okay. So in the league. Okay, easy. In this league, if you rank the players, let's say that we had like maybe 50 or 60 players in the league or so. Michael was probably like 1 or 2 most talented. Okay. Me, I was 59-60. Of most talented. Okay. So I'm the point guard and Michael's the forward. And so Michael and I would have issues on the court because Michael liked to get the rock in a certain place and in a certain volume. Okay. Now there's a problem with that. Okay. Michael wasn't the point guard. I was the point guard. Okay. Which means I had the ball and I decided who got the ball, where they got the ball, and the volume in which they received the ball. All right. So Michael and I would literally be on the same team, like taking an out-of-bounds thing, walking up the court, barking at one another. Okay, I'm dribbling the ball up. He'd be saying, "Yo, D, you see me over here?" I'm like, "Michael, if you keep talking, you will not get another ball today." Okay, keep it up.
Can we say 8 personalities? Can we say that?
Oh my goodness, man! It was so funny, and people are looking at us like, "Yo, dudes, y'all on the same team."
And by the way, we were winning.
We were winning now. That's true, Michael.
We were winning.
He's competitive too. He's a competitive dude. All right. I just had to say that, Michael.
Well,
what do you have to say for yourself, okay?
I don't have anything to say for what you said, but what I will say is that I had a lot of fun. That was a long time ago. That was probably 25 years.
You're 20 plus, man.
Yeah, 20 years
20
ago.
plus.
Yeah, those were good times.
Oh, weren't they good times, man?
Good times.
I had a really good time. All right. Okay, so now we're going to get on to more serious matters. So Larry went through your introduction, which is fabulous, by the way. The fact that you have not a little bit on the culture end, but you're actually really taking the experience that you've had throughout your career and you are applying that in the area of culture, like for real. Like, tell us where you are with IAAM.
Well, thank you for the question. And let me back up because, I've always, growing up and sort of getting into my career, I always had this firewall, this really distinct firewall between 2 aspects of who I am. On the one side, I really appreciated and was fascinated by brands, by marketing, by consumer behavior, trying to figure out how people think and how they make decisions. My mom, her PhD was in psychology. My dad's PhD was in philosophy. So we have all these sort of conversations.
Imagine those dinner tables. Robin, too, right? Dinner table conversations, right? So
branding was an extension of those kinds of that kind of thinking and efforts. I really, really loved it. But on the other side, I was descended from people who made a name for themselves in history and who really devoted their lives to public service and to social activism. And I knew that I wanted to sort of express that aspect of me. Yeah. But I I couldn't when I was young. I mean, growing up, I was, president of the student body and president of the African American Student Organization. I did those things where I could, but once you jump into the business world, it is difficult to do that. So now I am, that firewall has dissolved, and I am leveraging all this business acumen, this sort of general management, even startup sort of experience, but leveraging that in the service of this other side of me, this side toward history. And, we have this really unique opportunity in that we are, creating an African American history museum on the site largely where that history began.
Yeah.
So it's very powerful. There was a architecture critic from the New York Times came down about a year and a half or so ago, and he was telling about how he had been all around the world and seen all these kinds of things. And we were talking about the impact of what we were doing on the site and the power of the spot. And I had told him about the fact that I had been to the Holocaust Museum not too long ago, and he traces his roots to Jewish ancestry. And he was saying that what we're doing would be like taking the Holocaust Museum in D.C., picking it up and putting it down smack dab in the middle of Auschwitz or
It's exactly right.
And just how much more powerful that experience would be. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're leveraging the platform, the space, in a way to tell the stories that deserve to be told, that have been undertold, that have been muted for so long.
I love that undertold stories.
Yeah. So it's great. We're working hard. We're continuing to raise money to be able to break ground. Later this summer is the plan. We're actually taking this to city council. We're connected to the city of Charleston. And so we've got to take this for approval to city council in July. Hopefully that will allow us to do some preliminary site work through the summer and have a big groundbreaking event in October. And then it'll be about a 2-year construction cycle where we look to open in spring of 2021. So it's
so exciting.
It's going to be.
But you've raised all the money. All the money's right. All the money's no. You're still no. Okay. I shouldn't.
Okay.
Let me be honest about it. So
Please do.
We actually had a big event in August. We thought we were done.
Right.
We'd raised. It's a $100 million project. $25 million was the land that the city bought for the project. $25 million we got in local money from the city and the county. $25 we got from the state, and $25 we raised from private philanthropy.
Okay.
Once we did that, we were then able to go out and hire a construction manager to start pricing everything. Okay.
We got a budget problem?
We got a budget problem. Inflation and all sorts of other kinds of things sort of reared their ugly heads. So we had some more money to raise. So we're concluding that. We've raised another 12, 13 million on top of that. And, have a few more to go. And we've got great momentum. So we're very excited.
So, D, I'm going to say this. I know Mike and his team have done an incredible job of raising the money. I mean, literally from scratch, right, Mike? And so it's been an incredible undertaking that's been painful at times, but then incredibly rewarding at the end. And we're not at the end here. Like you said, you have more to go, but it's been incredible work and for something that's truly life-changing, I think, for you and for everybody that's going to be involved in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have an amazing team. The idea for this museum came from former Charleston Mayor Joe Riley. He had been mayor. He retired a couple of years ago, but had been mayor for 40 years. 40 years, one of the longest serving mayors in sort of contemporary history. And
not much in the term limits, I see.
Yeah. He was the man. I mean, he was delivering.
He's the dude. He did a good job.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And read a book called Slaves in the Family by a guy named Edward Ball, who was from a slave-holding family, and he was coming to terms with his family's history.
Wow.
And also connecting with some of the enslaved people who had been on his plantation. So to make a long story short, Mayor Riley really came to grips and became aware of a whole aspect of Charleston history that he just had not been taught. A lot of this history, Charleston is a city that's built on tourism and built on history.
Right. Yes.
But
not all history.
Not all of it.
Not all white history. I'm going to say that.
So we're looking forward to adding to the narrative, to filling that out. And I think it's going to be really powerful.
Oh, wow. So 2 takeaways, Michael, from that for those of you listening, and you'll hear more about it, and we encourage you to go check out the website to learn more. If you want to contribute to something that is meaningful, to have a story that is undertold actually be told at the level it should be told, then feel free to contribute.
What's the website again, Mike? Can you give it?
Yeah, it's IAAmuseum.org, IAAmuseum.org. And thank you for asking.
Yeah, he didn't know we were going to do that. The second takeaway is Michael was just gesturing, and he held up a note here in the studio that said that he is going to be working pro bono for the next however many years. That's going to be his contribution. So, Michael, thank you.
Now he's putting the cut sign.
Yeah. No, I'm making that up, people. I'm making that up. But seriously, though, Michael, you talked about your parents and the PhD and the psychology and conversations that you had at your dinner tables, and you alluded to your family beyond that. All right. And so we'd like you to share a little bit more about the legacy from whence you've come. So can you talk to us a bit about a gentleman named Robert Smalls?
Yeah, I'm honored to. So Robert Smalls was born enslaved in 1839 in Beaufort, South Carolina, right on the sort of in the low country there, and ended up as a 12-year-old on his own in Charleston, which is about an hour and a half by car north. It was the big city back then, and still is to some degree. Working on the docks, was married. As the Civil War broke out, he had been a pilot on a Confederate ship called the Planter. And, he, like I said, he was married. He had 2 very, very young children. And like any father, like any husband, he loved his family. And he, as an enslaved person, knew that his family could be sold away from him in an instant. And that bothered him. And so,
to say the least, right?
I was going to say, you think?
Yeah. So a couple things. One, he had negotiated with the master of his wife to buy the freedom of his wife and his children. While he was in Charleston, he got a salary, and he was allowed, and he obviously had to send that salary back to his master, but he was allowed to save $1 a month or so of that salary. And with that, he went out and he bought various sundries, tobacco, candy, fruit that he sold on the docks to make even more money. So he saved every penny of that.
My God.
And he put $100 down payment on the life and freedom of his children. But that wasn't enough. He knew that the Confederate crew on this ship, the Planter, that there were times that they left for the evening not to come back until the next day. And he also knew that just outside the mouth of the harbor, Charleston Harbor, was a federal blockade. And that if he could get there, that he would be free. And so again, fast forwarding to make a long story short, on the morning of May 13th, 1862, he saw an opportunity. The Confederate crew left. He gathered his family, the other enslaved crew, and their families, and he donned the long overcoat of the Confederate captain and his long, big top hat. Because he was the pilot of the boat, he knew all of the passcodes that he would need to sort of execute to get past the 4 or 5 forts in the harbor.
It's incredible.
It's unbelievable.
He marched his way, sailed his way to freedom, essentially. And then to make a long story short, he came back and fought in the Union Army, became the first African-American to command a United States naval vessel. He was the most senior African-American in the Union. He convinced President Lincoln to allow formerly enslaved men into the Union to serve. About 180,000 men did so, and some historians suggest that really helped the Union to win the war. And then after the war, he went back to his hometown of Beaufort, got involved in politics, was elected to the South Carolina House and then to the Senate.
That wasn't enough just to do what he did before.
Yeah.
And when he was in the legislature there, he wrote the legislation to create the first free compulsory statewide public school system there in South Carolina, but it was the first in the nation. There were public schools all around, but there was never a compulsory school system for all races, all classes, and the like. So he did that. And then after a while, he went to Congress, became one of the first African Americans to serve in Congress, and served 5 terms there before Reconstruction dissolved and sort of the rug was pulled from underneath African Americans at that time. So
how about that for a life? And Mike, you and I have talked about this a lot. So that May 12th, right? The night of May 12th, and then going into May 13th, Robert Smalls knew that at the end of that day, he was going to be free or dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a life or death proposition. They lined the bottom of the boat with dynamite. They knew that if they got caught, that not only would they be killed, but they'd be executed in a particularly violent and public way as an example for other people. And so they basically, it was a do or die proposition. And I often say, it's one thing to know how to sail a boat in the middle of the night, through the harbor. To do so at the imminent threat of death, that's another thing. And if he had flubbed up here or there, if he had, I wouldn't be here. So I have my very life to
literally.
Yes.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Yes. So that's the stock you come from. And so now fast forward to what you're doing now to take your incredible business background. And this is the wonderful thing that we talk about just in this humble podcast, Brands, Beats and Bites, the intersection of brand, tech, and culture, to bring all that together for good. As your friend, we can't be more happy for what you're doing and where you're supposed to be.
Thank you. No, it's definitely, I've had a lot of really great jobs. This is kind of a calling.
It is. Yeah.
Well said.
Beyond. Working at Coke on the Coke brand was an amazing job. I was, president of a company that was, really one of the pioneers of what we all now know as social media. That was a great job. I've done, some really fun things, but, I think I have an opportunity now to do something that will create some real lasting legacy that my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren will have a chance to come and see, and that will, positively impact the world we live in. So I feel blessed.
You know what I'm thinking, Michael? What a story. While not with the same degree of downside and risk, this IAAM experience that you're now having, this is your planter.
Well said, D.
And you've got to navigate this thing. Yeah. And not all of the waters are friendly.
No, they're not.
You're absolutely right.
And you've got some codes. And you need to use those codes. And if you don't succeed in doing this, then 100 years from now, the story of what is going to be told through IAAM isn't going to be told. That's why you're in this seat.
So true, D.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it is interesting. It is not without complexities around politics and the like, but we've got a wonderful, wonderful team of folks who are the best at what they do in the country, and we're working hard.
Great.
Thank you.
So now we're going to go back to the little bit of marketing here.
Love it.
Okay.
Love it.
So which is again, I know you enjoy that aspect of you, but that was such great conversation about IAAM
really
and the background.
Thank you, Michael.
To your family, and I'm so glad we got that story out. Really terrific. So, okay. So now, Mike, we have a next segment. It's called On the Clock. It's what we call this. So, on our show, we have a lot of CMOs on, folks like yourself, and we've read all kinds of reports and news out there that the tenure for CMOs is pretty damn short, right? And we use the stat that we've read for high growth companies that the average tenure is 18 months. So what are you going to do in 18 months?
And dropping.
Yeah, and dropping, right? So with your great, unique perspective on this, been a CMO at a high growth tech company, having chaired a group of CMOs, and you did that for a while, right? And then as a CEO, you've had marketing underneath you in terms of folks in the marketing chairs and marketing leadership report to you. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think marketing and I have a couple of hypotheses about this, but marketing is like, for many general managers, is like a black box.
Yeah. Well said.
They know that it's powerful, that it works, that they need it, that they need to invest in it, but they don't have a clue about how it works, about what's going on in that box. They don't.
It's an amorphous black box, meaning they don't know what's going on in the black box, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And so oftentimes they're not able to provide the support for marketing and branding that is required, but yet obviously a CMO is held responsible for performance. And, in the same way that you see in a variety of different contexts, you see, in sports, you'll see a coach get fired. Well,
yeah.
Maybe it's the coach's fault. Maybe it's the general manager's fault.
Right.
Yes.
And there's a difference. So I think, the CEOs have to be or held accountable for the performance of their organizations. And particularly if it's a consumer company, then the CMO has really considerable weight in all of that. And, if things aren't moving, the CEO is starting to feel the heat, then it's politically, something's got to give. And oftentimes, too often, it's the CMO.
Far too often, it's the CMO. I've got an analog to that sharing that you just made there, Michael and Larry. It's this. This thing is complicated by the following. I'm a consumer of air travel.
A big consumer.
Traveled all over the world. I love to travel. I'm okay being on a plane. I'm not bothered by being on a plane. But because I'm a consumer of air travel does not mean that I rise from my seat, go knock on the cockpit door, and say, hey, I got some thoughts about how this plane ought to be flown here. Exactly. In fact, excuse me, pilot, can you get up? You go sit in my seat, and I'll get us into Gatwick. All right? I'm good with that. This is what happens with marketing, with C-suite executives and others.
Too often.
Because they're consumers of marketing and consumers, they think they can fly the marketing plane. So it's a black box, but oddly, Michael and Larry, some people think they got it figured out.
Absolutely.
And they don't.
Yeah, and most don't.
Yes.
That's well said.
The vast majority don't.
Correct.
Which is why, you all are in the right spot.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks.
Doing
Thank
the right things.
Yeah. So, Charlotte, can you take us to our first read, please?
The Music Maker Relief Foundation works to preserve the revered musical traditions of the American South, ensuring that musicians' voices will not be silenced by poverty or time. Music Maker brings live performances to underserved populations, guides artists in professional development, and assists with booking and tour management, and provides monthly stipends for food, shelter, and medical care when needed. You can help by volunteering your time or donating. For more info, visit musicmaker.org.
Thank you, Charlotte. Check out musicmaker.org. All right, Michael, we are now into our next segment. We call it 5 questions. I hit you with a question. LT hits you with a question until we get to 5. And the first one is this. What was the first branding experience that you had that really lit your fire? Where you were like, what just happened here? Like a first love for you.
I mean, it had to be when I first got to Coke. I had a previous brand experience at what was then called General Foods, actually working on sugar-free Jell-O gelatin, which was a blast.
Wow.
But when I got to Coke, there's a different kind of marketing, much more consumer focused. We were allowed, because of the bottling network, and I'm obviously speaking to the choir here. You guys know this better than I, but that allowed brand managers to be much more consumer centric and focused, and so, as mentioned earlier, my first brand, I actually worked on 2 right out of the gate. It was Mellow Yellow and Mr. Pibb.
Oh, yes.
We forgot about the shout out to Mr. Pibb.
Right.
Mr. Pibb.
That's right.
And remember your Kyle Petty Mellow Yellow days,
that's
right?
That's right. So for me, it was great, though, because here I am at this enormous company with, just at the time, seemingly unlimited resources for marketing and branding, but I had an opportunity to cut my teeth on these somewhat smaller tactical brands. And so folks didn't get in our business so much, you know. I mean, you're working on Sprite, you're working on Powerade, you know, folks looking over your shoulders in a pretty significant way. You know, we were kind of left alone, and we actually did a complete new sort of brand identity on the businesses and, you know, did some fun advertising. You know, as Larry mentioned, Mellow Yellow was involved at the time in NASCAR racing. And so that was fun getting to learn that property and how to use something like that to help build awareness and build a brand. So that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Mr. Pibb and Mellow Yellow.
That's really cool. And so that really helped you then get into Classic, where now it was completely the opposite, where at the time, Roberto Goizueta was the CEO. He was the brand manager.
He was the brand manager of Coke.
Absolutely.
And everybody knew it.
No
right?
As he should have been.
Right,
yes,
right,
that's right.
Right.
As he should have.
Names on the building.
Right. That's right. That's right.
But no, it was great. I mean, working broadly, you know, working at Coke was, for me, just a really transformational experience. You know, before I went to Coke after business school, but before business school, I was on the banking side. I was a commercial lender for 5 or 6 years. I knew I wanted to get into marketing, but, you know, obviously as a banker, you can't knock on Coke's door and say, hey, you know, put me down. So I got the MBA, which was great, and just really loved, again, trying to get inside consumers' heads, trying to figure out, you know, what makes them tick. How do you talk to them in a way that will resonate and urge them to do something, to buy your product, to like your product. So it was a lot of fun.
Where do you think you did that best? You're talking about getting into consumers' head. Where do you think that, if you can think of something off the top of your head where you go, wow, we really got into their head and really came out with something that was special?
You know, I think I'm probably still working on that.
Okay.
It's a work in process. Right. I mean, I think clearly at Coke, you know, before going into sort of smaller, more entrepreneurial environments, I mean, we had an amazing sort of inventory of resources to apply to in terms of research, in terms of, you know, agencies.
We had the best of the best to tap into.
So I think that was where I learned certainly the most. I was on the steepest part of the learning curve in terms of my brand thinking. And then, you know, from there, but then use that in other kinds of environments. When we were at No Fear, you know, again, a brand that is pretty much lost to obscurity at this point. But at the time, it was huge. It was the fastest growing, you know, sort of a brand, sports brand in the world. We sold
pioneer.
We sold more branded T-shirts, for example, than any other brand in the country, in the world at that time.
So more than Nike, more than Adidas, anybody.
Yeah. And we were adding sort of edge and attitude. And Nike came from that. You know, with
Steve Prefontaine and way back,
rebelliousness.
But they had kind of, you know, smoothed out a little bit. We were, you know, really sort of coming at it from a much more aggressive standpoint. You know, I'll talk about this in what I'm imagining one of the future questions will be. But,
okay,
we love it.
We'll see.
We'll love it. Okay, so I'm going to go to question 2. So, Mike, who has had or is having the most influence on your career?
Well, you know, for this one, this is going to sound kind of sappy, perhaps, but it'll be true. You know, I have always been one who has, for some crazy reason, has shied away from, or who has underperformed looking for mentors, going out and sort of securing mentors. And I don't know quite why. Maybe there's some, you know, a little bit of an introvert. I'm not exactly sure. But there's no question that the person who has had the most influence on me as a human being was my mother. You know, she told me
still to this day,
over and over again, that I can do anything I want to do. I was just foolish enough to believe her. You know, it just sort of got ingrained in my thinking. And so there were plenty of instances where I'd walk into a situation and I'd have no reasonable expectation to be able to do something or whatever. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm at least having a credible conversation. You know, back in the mid 90s, you know, Larry, you may recall, had a crazy idea. You know what? You had Jeff in earlier. You know what? We should go try to see what we can do. Let's go buy Converse.
That's right.
I remember this.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
We almost did.
We were young and didn't, weren't general managers in the true sense of the word, but we knew brands.
Right.
And we developed a hypothesis about how to, really build that brand and create real economic opportunity from it. And we got close.
We did. Almost did. No, that's cool. And I have to say a shout to your mom, who is still to this day, right, has such a great influence on you and a pioneer that she's been. Think of in her generation, right, being a PhD and all the great things that your mom and dad did vis-a-vis business and African Americans, I think should be stated as well, right? So that's something too. So, Dee, you want to go to the next one?
I do. Michael, you've been a CMO, you've been a president, you've been a CEO, you've been like the lead dude in many different areas of your career. And our guests are no doubt listening and going, "Ooh, this is a deep brother right here." And you are when you're not barking at me walking down the court. You're a deep guy.
You knew he was going to do this, right? You knew he was going to bring this.
I was going to write it into the contract. No basketball. No, this is great.
We're throwing that out. We're throwing that contract out. Rip it up. What we'd like you to share is your biggest F up and what you learned from it, Michael.
So I'm not sure I'm going to get at this in the way that you are expecting. I mean, I F up all the time.
Okay. All right.
And so, I'm a human being. I make a lot of mistakes, but I have built my brain in a way that I don't think about mistakes. There have been plenty of things that I've done that haven't worked out the way that I had planned or the way that I had hoped. But I've always been a very introspective person, very sort of self-analytical. And I think a lot about what happened. I really sort of go through it and I try to learn from it. And so if something happens and or if I make a decision and something happens a little bit differently, if I can extract the learning, the key sort of learnings from that, then I feel like I'm ahead. I've got insight that I might not otherwise have had. Now, plenty of things. I mean, I was mentioning this about No Fear before. When we were at No Fear, Nike came calling twice that I know of, wanted to buy us. And we said no. We had some hubris. We were, growing at a ridiculously aggressive pace.
And Nike wasn't buying brands at that time.
They weren't.
Right? I mean, think about it. There was no, that was really.
This was pre-Oakley even, I think.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
They were scarred.
That's exactly right.
Well, and we made the decision that no, that was not, we weren't going to do that. We were going to go it on our own. I think that was a mistake.
Why?
Because I think, or we would either have to do that or we would have had to go public to be able to capitalize growth in a way that would allow us to continue to compete and to market ourselves globally. And without that capital, there are ebbs and flows in any business, and we just kind of ran into a brick wall of sort of capitalization. So I think that was a mistake that we made. I think, some people have looked back. I remember as I was leaving Coke, people told me I was crazy.
They told you were nuts. I remember that.
I do too.
Yeah.
And,
I remember that.
For me, I had already worked about 6 years before going to business school. I felt like I needed to continue to stay on that steep part of the learning curve. I had been, managing the Coke brand, the Coke Classic brand for a number of years. And I was about to, perhaps get moved off of that. And so I just took a leap. It was interesting. It was, I grew immensely. I tripled my salary. I earned some real stock that was great for me at the time. I had leadership of, sort of a marketing organization that was new and different. I was in a fast growth. I was out of my comfort zone in a way that, was good for me. And so, but again,
in San Diego, that didn't suck either.
Oh, man.
Oh, no, that didn't suck at all.
That was great. So, there were a lot of things, that I've done. I had an opportunity to work with Mike Milken in Knowledge Universe when he was sort of had amassed
junk
fortunes.
bonds.
Yeah, he had, was in that business and got out of jail, frankly, and was trying to, do some other things and had opportunity to work there. That was a flyer. That was a leap. So I've taken chances, but I've always tried to, and not all of them have worked out as I expected.
They never
but
do.
I've learned, I've grown, and I was able to leverage those learnings in future kinds of endeavors that have put me ahead. So
let's go back to no fear.
Yes.
So Nike comes calling. You say no once, and then you say no twice. And then you talked about this lack of capital wall that you hit. What did you learn from that?
Great question.
And how has that impacted future decisions?
Yeah, that is a great question. The power of ego.
Ooh.
That sometimes, we always talk about business as being this sort of dispassionate exercise, making these decisions based on formulas and the like. Maybe that happens sometimes, but just as often, I've seen, personal egos being involved where, and so, I think that's the case that even, a company is just the collection of human beings who come together theoretically for, a common purpose. But you can never forget that it's just people, it's human beings. Right. Even the CEO of, whatever the big company or whatever, he's a human being who has thoughts, he has feelings.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the things.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
No, that's great. Okay, so we're going to question 4 here. So, Mike, thinking back to your Infopop days, and I remember talking to you then, like, this social media's coming, and then we've got these really cool tools, right? And so, you were involved at the forefront of that. And then, obviously, marketing has been either front and center or pretty close to front and center for your entire career post-grad school. So with that, what's your thoughts about the largest impact technology will have on the future of marketing?
Yeah, I think it's going to be incredible, and I don't think we can fully imagine the impact that technology would have. But let me take a quick step back. You all are very well preserved. I'm old enough to have been around at the Coca-Cola company, for example, when I was sitting at the table and someone said, "Website? Like, what's a website? Like, what do we need a website for? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to put on it? Do we need one of those?"
Yeah.
And then, about a decade later, I was at the table with lots of companies. We were selling social media online communities to media companies like Sony and the New York Times and Discovery Channel, who wanted to figure out how to leverage, repurpose some of the content that they developed. But I was at these tables where people would say, social media, like, is that even a thing? Like, is it real? Like, what do you do with it? And so I think there's going to be something else in our lifetime that's going to be big and powerful.
That we can't imagine right now.
We can't imagine. I look at the way, I've got youngsters. My youngest is 12. I have a niece who is 6. And I see the way they engage with technology. And, I like to pride myself as being pretty adept at dealing with technology. I really enjoy it as a consumer. But they just engage. It's imprinted. The experience of engaging with technology is imprinted on them in just a very different way.
Right, it is.
She's 6 years old and she's, flipping around and doing all kind of stuff with her phone, with a laptop. And so I can only imagine what that early experience, when, in particular, when young people's brains are developing and how technology is engaged with that's going to allow them to envision all kinds of things that at least I can't envision now.
So could you think how it might impact marketing, though? Again, thinking of marketing specifically, like even like what's going on with AI and everything.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, I think, again, it will impact everything. It will continue to impact data.
Right.
And the way that we understand how marketing and particularly advertising work. I think that's critical. I hope that it allows us to glean greater insights into consumer behavior in more powerful ways. I think some of this data stuff has become a crutch that people just look to numbers and, make sort of decisions off that. I'm with that. I don't want to mischaracterize my view on data, but I think you've got to have a broad sort of holistic view about these things. And can only imagine that technology will help all of those.
Right.
All right, Michael. Final question of the 5. Seen a lot, done a lot, interacted with a lot of different people. Of everything that you've done, whether it be in work life or personal, what are you most proud of?
Okay, well, that's easy. Since you put the personal piece on
Yes,
it, and that's easy. I was put on this planet to be the father to my 4 children. And, that
Can we give a shout out?
Well, that may sound,
let's give a shout out to all 4, please.
Yeah. So my oldest is David. He's at Central Michigan University now.
Is that Chippewa?
He is. He's a Chippewa. Look for him on the football field. Plays quarterback there. My next oldest is Lucas, who is just finishing up his freshman year at Georgia Southern University as defensive back. Plays there. My next is a junior in high school at Wando High School, plays lacrosse. Chip off the old block.
Israel.
That's right. And then my youngest is Robert, who, Daryl, you'll be proud to know, is a basketball player.
Is he really?
He's nice.
And a darn good one.
He's nice.
Yeah.
12. He's
and
really good kids and everything. But on the professional front, if I can offer a second dimension to this. So everything in life, one way or the other, is additive, particularly if you are introspective and you're thinking and you are in a mode of learning a lot. You are smarter tomorrow than you are today. And so in that way, I think what I'm doing now with this museum and creating something that will have potentially a lasting impact on this nation, I think that's really important. But even with that, I think my best days are ahead of me. I just feel really optimistic about the impact that I'm able to have now, and I don't think I'm through. So
not even close.
You're not.
You're not even close.
That's because you're not, Michael.
Yeah. Not even close.
Charlotte, would you please give us another read?
Yes, we're going to give you an improv read more about the museum. And so IAAM aims to recenter South Carolina's place in global history, illuminating its pivotal role in the development of the international slave trade and the Civil War. The museum will connect visitors to their ancestors, demonstrating how enslaved Africans and free blacks shaped economic, political, and cultural development in the nation and beyond. Film documents and digital archives further aid visitors in placing the story of African arrival in historical context. So we want to continue to encourage you all that there are many ways to support the IAAM. You can help pass information along. You can volunteer. Just contact us, go to their website. It's very, very easy, IAAM. And you can become a member. We can all do that, like today. You can make a donation. Donations of any size are greatly appreciated. So just go to their website, click, make a donation, $10. I know it helps. So thank you so very much for being here with us. And I think it's such a fabulous endeavor. We're going to really track it from here and see how it moves forward.
Thank you, Michael. IAAmuseum.org.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, we can't shout that out enough. Honestly, we appreciate it. Okay, Mike. So this is, we're getting towards the end here. Last big segment we like to call What's Poppin'.
What's poppin'?
So what we do in What's Poppin' is that we have, Dee and I each have a take on something that's current or we want to get off our chest, okay? And we give you the opportunity to do the same. So you can have your own, you can build on ours, whatever you're comfortable with. So I'm going to start off. All right. So
what you got, Larry?
Okay, so it's perfect segue. Mike mentioned his 4 kids. So there's and the NCAA tournament already happened a bit ago, but there was an ad during the NCAA tournament from, of all places, Phillips 66. Okay, the gasoline. And I don't know if you folks have out there, but I'm going to give you a little story about it, or tell you a little bit about it. I would encourage you to go YouTube it. If you YouTube Phillips 66 and father-daughter. And basically it gives the story of a dad helping his daughter play basketball, and then they show them in the car. And they show them in the car at all different flavors of what's going on when you're taking your daughter to whatever athletic endeavor it is. And in this case, it's basketball. So they show states of euphoria. They show states of distraction. They show states of both of them being pissed off at each other. They show the girl saying, I don't want to talk about it, like that. They just depict the ferrying around that us parents do of children in a way that's so cool. It's just incredibly impactful. And they also show with friends in the car and not friends in the car, but it's all about them going to and from what seems like her AAU basketball tournaments, right? And so it really speaks to me, right? And they end it with the tagline, live to the full. And they show the gas gauge going to the F. And so here's a gasoline.
Yes.
Doesn't talk about what kind of Techron they have. No offense to those folks. This is a gasoline that I got to tell you, to use my Yiddish vernacular, it got me verklempt. It did. It made me such, it really moved me. And we think that the emotion of what we try to convey in brand positioning doctors, it's all about the emotional connection that people have. And I think if you're a parent, and even if you're taking your kid to violin lessons, you're going to get this. It doesn't have to be basketball, and it doesn't have to be that you have a daughter or a mother or father. It was just brilliant. So, D, you have your 3 girls. Mike, you've just talked about your 4 boys and ferrying folks. My thought on this commercial is, what's Phillips 66 going to do next?
Yeah.
From here. Yeah. But I don't know if either of you have seen that ad, but your thoughts.
Michael.
Yeah, I saw it, and I agree with everything you said.
Oh, there's a conjunction coming.
I think it was beautifully shot. I think it really taps into the father-child dynamic around sports and the like.
But with all due respect,
I love the E to F.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant. But my problem with that ad is, I think for me, I think it's a good ad. I think it's a wonderful piece of sort of micro cinema. It's a nice story.
Right.
I'm not sure how effectively the Phillips 66 brand
I agree with that.
woven into the story.
Yeah.
Phillips 66 is like a sort of a product, kind of a shot.
Right.
You could, I remember a wise person once told me, LT, that if you could pull out one brand and just put another one in,
oh yes,
then that's what I'm
just glad you're challenging.
This is what we need.
No. I just wish they had, because I think it's brilliant. I think it's very emotional. It taps into some wonderful stuff. I just wish they had figured some way to sort of integrate.
I agree 100%.
What the essence of Phillips 66 is, just
Michael.
A little bit more.
And that's why I wanted to.
It's
a great point. That's why I want to say I want to see what they do next.
Yep.
I agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, I do too.
In a huge way. D, what are your thoughts?
I have 2 reactions. The first one is I'm here in the booth, and with me, our executive producers and our audio engineer. So Charlotte's with me back here. Anderson's with me, as well as Jeff. And so, Michael, you challenging LT, basically destroying his point.
No,
I would like to have a new co-host. That's the first thing. Okay, I'm sorry, LT.
I don't think Stanford's moving to Charleston. So
I want Michael to be the new co-host. No, just kidding. All right. The second thing is that LT, I'm with you. What Petroleum 66 is doing, and we help our clients do this in our day-to-day business, is they are attempting to ladder up.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're not down at we have 93 octane.
Right.
So they're not at a feature. They're not even at a benefit level. They've gone beyond functional benefits, which is what the brand does for you when you engage with it. They're beyond emotional benefits, which is what you want people to feel when they engage with the brand. They're all the way up to dad is a hero in my life. Don't you want to be a hero like this? Now, I agree they could do a better job of weaving the Phillips 66 brand in because we haven't seen their brand architecture.
That's right.
We haven't seen their positioning
statement. And let's be clear, we have nothing to do with Phillips.
We have nothing to do with
them. They're not a client. None of us have anything to do. That's just a shout out to them.
Just shout out to but it's the beginning of something.
Right.
And so that I love.
Yeah. And I think just where I see the opportunity in, like you said, LT, and sort of what they do next is telling the story of how Phillips 66 helps make that experience.
That's right.
In a unique
100% agree.
Right.
Co-host Michael Bowe-Moore. Thank you.
No, and that's a great. We've had this conversation. That's why Mike.
We have. I know. Yes.
We've all had this, and that's why it's a great challenge. And that, just to be clear, to defend myself,
you don't even think yourself.
No. I'm honest. I want to say that's why I want to see what they do next.
Yes.
But Mike is 100% right in that you really could put Chevron or Shell or anyone in there right now and had their gas station in the background like Phillips 66 did. So that's why let's see what they do after this.
Like our show is called Brands, Beats, and Bites. Mm-hmm. And to go to beats like music, an artist can sometimes put out a hit, but they can be a one-hit wonder.
That's right.
You want to know what comes after.
That's
what's your catalog?
That's right.
So they blazed this Phillips 66 with they got a hit.
Yeah.
What's next?
But the thing for me is that unless they just have a ridiculous amount of media to spend behind,
which they don't seem to,
then they're really not getting the biggest bang out of the buck because of the way that.
Because it's not ownable.
But I agree 1,000%. I think, part of what frustrates me most about kind of techie kind of advertising is that there isn't a real acknowledgement, appreciation of things beyond features and benefits.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I look at this phone. I mean, I've got a Samsung phone, and in my view, Samsung is at least as innovative as Apple in terms of features and benefits.
Don't tell your wife Carla that, though.
Yeah, I know. Well, but here's the thing. They've got folding phones now, and they've got all this other kind of stuff. But the problem is that the Apple iPhone's brand is just so much more powerful.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
So, and here's the other interesting thing. I don't remember the guy's name, but there's a Coke guy who's CMO of Samsung now.
Oh, interesting.
You're right. Yes.
But they haven't been able to.
That's right.
That's where they need to go. Is they need to figure out how to tell the stories of how this phone, integrates with people's lives.
Agree.
Right.
100%. All right. I'm gonna go to mine now. I'm gonna be in sports category again. Talk about Hulu. So Hulu has a campaign that they've spent a lot of money on.
And through the NBA playoffs.
Oh, yes. A lot of money. Major Coin, Cheddar, Moolah, Skrilla, all of that. They are a
big bag.
Yeah, all of it. They are convincing or wanting people to know that Hulu now has live sports. And on some levels, they might say, well, you guys are talking about it on your show that has to do with branding and marketing, so we've succeeded. No, you haven't. But let me tell you what they're attempting to do. They are attempting to say that there are these influencers who work for all of these different brands, and they're shilling these brands, but they're not necessarily being upfront about the fact that they're being paid to do so. So we're going to throw that out and say, listen, people get paid to sell you stuff, and we're just going to show you that. So they've got Joel Embiid. They've got Dame Dollar, like Dame Dollar. And then they've got Giannis, so the Greek Freak. And each of them has their own spot where they talk about it's all about Hulu has live sports, and they're only doing it for the money. And the spots end with each of them surrounded by some form of money. Dame Dollar's using money guns. Money's going up in the air. Giannis is talking about money in a contract, or some guy that's playing an attorney, telling him how much money he's going to get. He's sitting next to a bag of money. And Joel Embiid is kind of doing like the scraping of the money, like make it rain, that type of deal. So all of them are doing that. So I can imagine the discussion was from a strategy perspective. You see this insight? We're being upfront.
Right.
Yeah. It's trash. It's trash. This is what I call being too cool for school. Because if you don't get that joke, that little inside joke, and of course they'll say, listen, dude, the CMO will say, dude, you're old. Millennials get this. Like, no, I'm not buying that. If you don't get that little joke, that twist, what it says about Hulu is it costs a bunch of freaking money.
Right.
Yeah, unintentionally that could be the way.
Right.
And the second thing it would say is that the only reason that I would talk about this garbage is because I'm getting paid. So I think it's being too cool for school. So that's my takeaway. What do you guys think?
Mike, you want to go?
I'm not familiar with the campaign, but I couldn't agree more. I mean, there are so many times in advertising that people are trying to be cool and be hip, and it comes off forced and doesn't work. So I agree.
It does come off. All the things that you just said, and of course I agree with Dee. And the other part of it is, how did they decide? These are three great young players.
They are.
Okay?
They are.
But where's the triangulation with the brands of these gentlemen and Hulu and how they all work in concert? They're almost independent entities in that sense.
I got a quick answer.
They haven't brought it together. All we know is that they're shouting Hulu has live sports, but that's it. There's nothing else there.
In the words of the great philosopher and poet Charles Barkley, it's terrible. Terrible.
Yes. Here. Shall we turn it over to Dr. Moore here?
Yes, please.
Your new host?
My new co-host, yes. Okay, so what's popping for you, Michael? Anything popping for you?
I think I'll go back just broadly talking about, sort of marketing and advertising and being effective and putting your best foot forward. I mean, I think that, what you guys do is so critical, and it amazes me. This is 2019, and there are plenty of people in very senior positions of particularly consumer companies that can't really articulate what positioning is, what it does, and the power, behind it to sort of propel advertising and marketing forward. And so I think I'll just throw that out. I mean, y'all are going to be, certainly multi-millionaires, if not billionaires, if you can, do your thing.
Thank you, Michael.
I continue. I remember I called LT one time. I don't remember the specific meeting, but, I'm in this meeting talking about marketing and advertising and the keys to moving that forward. And throughout the whole thing, the word positioning never came up once.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact, it was a Renaissance weekend where, brilliant people. There were Nobel laureates and astronauts and all these folks, and we were having this conversation about consumer marketing. And, people don't know about it. It'd be like if we were physicians and, all of a sudden someone said something about the heart.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you talk about marketing? How do you talk about branding, about brands, about advertising? And you're not really fluent in positioning.
Right.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense.
What do you always say about the space shuttle? That's what you always used to tell people, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a foolish little analogy, but, think of yourself, you're up in space and you're about to sort of re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. You've got to enter at just the right angle of approach to get to the specific spot on the ground that you need to be on. If you're just a little bit off up top, you could be hundreds of miles away.
Yes.
And that's what positioning does. It helps you understand, and I'm obviously
a great analog.
But you got to know exactly how to approach the consumers that you're trying to market to, what to say it, how to touch them up at the strategic level, so that when you're advertising, when your product, when all your consumer touch points kind of hit the ground, you're right where you need to be. So,
yeah.
What a great analogy.
He's a pretty smart guy, this guy.
That dude's pretty smart. He's going to be good to work with in the show. I'm telling you. In fact, Larry, I'm wondering, why do you still have the mic?
Hey, you know what? We might take your mic away.
As you should.
Michael's a Stanford alumni?
No.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Okay, not yet. Good enough. That's good, Charlotte. That's good.
Okay. So, man, I can't believe we're down to the show close.
I know.
This has been so much fun.
It's been a blast.
It's been so much fun.
A blast.
All right. So, D, I'm going to start off with the show close here, all right? And Mike, what we do in the close is simply sort of articulate what we've learned from you here. There's so much here. And what I want to cull it down to is I love what you said, and I've heard you say a lot of things, a lot of wisdom over the years, but I love that you're talking about when you said that everything's additive, that you're smarter tomorrow than today. And that's truly the way you approach your life. Mm-hmm. And that's the way you have continued to evolve to where you're doing, as you said, this calling, right? Which, I mean, when you first told me about this, I remember saying, oh my God, like there can't be more of a perfect job and a perfect person that I've ever heard before.
Yes.
And so I think also I'm going to say some macro. If you live your life right and you do the right things, and you put your nose down and you do your homework and you treat people the way they should be treated and you have relationships like you've had over the years, you hopefully will end up being like this gentleman sitting next to me. So
you're too kind.
You know.
Well said. Well said, Larry. Michael, it's hard for me to boil down a few takeaways. So much great things that you have dropped here. You've dropped many jewels on our audience here. But I started to coalesce around this from our chat with you. We learned from you. In brands and in marketing and communication, I think sometimes people get confused between content versus essence. Content is what brands and marketers use to talk about their brand, and they do it in many different mediums, in social media, TV ads, out of home, etc. And the content is the message and the storytelling, and all of this is important. But what they missed often is what's the essence of the brand? What is it when you strip away all of that? What does the brand really stand for? What does it really mean? And then I'm going to come back to you, fella. You talked about this firewall between your career and your calling. So the question that I have for our listening audience is, who are you when you remove the titles and the descriptors? Like when you get away from, I've got an MBA, I'm a marketer, I'm a female, I'm African, I'm Asian, I'm Latino, I'm a father, I'm a mother. When you take all of that away, who is the you behind the you? And you, Michael, have figured that out. And that's why you're doing what you're doing right now. And I am inspired. I'm honored. I'm awed. And I feel blessed to have you sitting in the studio with us right now. That's what I've learned from you, my brother.
So how are you going to follow that up now? But it's true.
I appreciate it. You guys are very generous, and I mentioned perhaps being a little bit of an introvert, and not overly so, but for whatever reason, at every sort of epoch era of my life, I have one or two people that I've stayed in contact with from middle school, from high school, from college, and the like. And from a very important time in my life, in my, I guess early 30s, the early 90s, you guys are the ones who, sort of come to mind. I mean, DC, I remember having lots of conversations with you. I remember one time, outside in the middle of the night talking about Ferraris.
Oh, yes.
About decisions about, I'm never going to, I'm always going to be spending more money on cars.
Yes.
And then we became fathers.
We became fathers.
We got married and
things changed.
Yes, they do.
Priorities changed.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it's great. And LT, you and I have, we've stayed in touch and been close forever. And so you guys I consider you my brothers. So
yes, we feel the same way.
We feel the same way.
So what'd you learn from us today? Anything?
Well, again, I remain convinced that what you all do is, and I'm not just saying this to blow smoke, it is really the key to really successful consumer marketing. And if I am a CEO, and I am a CEO, and I've been CEO in other contexts, and I am looking to grow my business, I got to talk to you guys.
Oh, thank you.
Because you all have that insight that can pull together, a strategic, compelling, point of difference and communications that can move the needle. And it amazes me. This is 2019. And there's still some mystery about all this.
Yeah. And most people don't get it, unfortunately, as you said.
So I think they do.
I applaud you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you
for the great work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Oh, man, we got to close the show? Charlotte, we got to close the show, I guess, right?
Oh, my goodness.
I know. Well, anyway, let's do so. Okay, so everyone who stuck around for this, what I think was incredibly compelling show today, thank you so much for listening to Brands, Beats, and Bites, recorded here on the farm at Stanford University Studios in Stanford, California, and a production of KZSU Stanford 90.1 FM radio and worldwide at kzsu.org. Today, the recording engineer is the fabulous Charlotte M. Thornton.
One and only.
Chief Engineer Mark Lawrence. The executive producers of Brands, Beats, and Bites are Jeff Shirley, Daryl D.C. Cobbin, Larry Taman, Tom Dioro, and Joseph Anderson. We hope you enjoyed our show today, and we look forward to next time, where we hope to have more insightful and enlightening talk about marketing with another great business leader as our guest.
And a new co-host.
And who's going to be the one missing, though?
And if you wish to contact us and our new co-host, our email is brandsbeatsbites@kzsustanford.edu. And again, that is brandsbeatsbites@kzsu.stanford.edu. Now, for your consideration, the history of your great-great-grandparents is directly responsible for your being here. Know your ancestry, and be sure to visit the International African American Museum.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Awesome.